Listen up. We are back with another episode of the Construction Mentor Podcast. My name is Ike. I am your host. What are we here to do? We're here to promote the construction industry pretty much as the place to be. Whatever you want your life to look like, whatever kind of car you want to drive, house you want, whatever your vacations want, whatever that dream life is for you, it really is all attainable in the construction industry. So we want to show you the paths that are available to you, how to get there, and we want to give you mentorship, whether you're thinking about coming into the industry or you're already in the industry, to take your career to the next height. Now, we have a couple ways that we like to do that. Number one, if you go click the link on the bio, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok at The Construction Mentor, click the link in the bio. There is a construction management course, 40-hour course, that'll take you through everything from how to be a leader to contract types to how to run a project, build a schedule, and then trade knowledge across 14 different trades. And then the second way is this podcast, and we like to bring people like my guest today on the show to talk about how they found success in their career. So today we have Will Hunt. As you can see, if you're on the video, you can see his name down in the corner, and he's going to share his story with us. So Eric, how are you?
I'm doing good. Ike, how you doing?
I am all right. So why don't you tell people what exactly you do, where you are in the country, first of all,
Okay.
and what exactly you do for work.
All right. So once again, my name's Eric Hunt. I'm out in the San Francisco Bay Area, about 50 miles outside of San Francisco to the east. And I work in Pittsburgh, California, but I reside in Brentwood, California. I'm a facilities manager. I work for a property management company, and we have multi-divisions: residential, commercial, industrial. I run the residential division, 1,600 plus units and a handful of single family homes. I oversee all of the maintenance. I have 12 guys that work underneath me. I run jobs. I do the schedule. I collect bids for capital improvements, handle all maintenance stuff.
So it's really funny because I just posted like an hour ago about how the career opportunities in construction are not limited to new builds. And I don't think people understand that. Like, a lot of people think when they think construction, they think new homes being built and new out of the ground skyscrapers. But we have over 6 million existing commercial structures in the country. That's over 100 billion square feet, or almost 100 billion square feet. And we have 142 million homes, all of which, once they're there, just if anybody's bought a house before or lives in a house, it only takes a couple of years, and all of a sudden things have to get replaced, upgraded, whatever it may be. So what's really interesting is the role of facilities manager, and I'm sure you didn't start out there. I'm sure that there's a path of how you got there. So I want to get into what a facilities manager is later on, but why don't we take a step back? Because I know you have a bit of a backstory when you were younger. Why don't you tell everybody what Eric was like when he was a kid, say, junior high, high school? What was Eric like?
Okay. So where I am today is the backstory is super essential to where I am today. So when I was growing up, nobody around me had a job. And I know it's going to be relatable for a lot of people in the construction industry. We kind of just land in these jobs because we're not good at school. We don't do good with authority figures and stuff like that. I know that's why we all end up in this situation. But you can build something out of getting into that situation, and that's what we're here for. So when I was a kid, I grew up in a pretty bad environment, had a lot of gangs and drug usage. And, my mom was kind of in and out and on the streets. And my dad was real sick. He was a diabetic. He was blind and had one leg amputated, like right before I was born. So all of that stuff kind of pushed me. And then I found skateboarding, and skateboarding taught me a lot of stuff, like in regards to hard work, getting up after you fall, never giving up, and just consistency and persistence. So that led me for years. All I cared about was my skateboard, just pushing wood down the street, going to skate park with my friends. It was like a release, but it was more like a therapeutic. It was more therapeutic for us because we could just lock in and disappear, and just all we worried about is not breaking our legs. You know what I'm saying? So that taught me work ethic. It taught me never to give up. It taught me just to keep trying until I get it right, and just persistence and persistence. So as I turned about 15 years old, I had an opportunity to build a prefabricated house in Vacaville, California. I don't know if you're familiar with prefab homes, but it's OSB compressed with foam insulation in the middle. And
And what's OSB?
OSB is a plywood, engineered plywood. So it's just compressed. You got foam insulation. You frame out the mud seal. You click the panels together with these I forget what they're called, but they go in between the two panels. So it's literally you're essentially building blocks.
So if we could hit the pause button on that real quick,
Hmm.
you had mentioned that nobody was really working around you and that you were in a tough environment. And I think for a lot of people, they look at you, they're like, all right, good looking guy. He's got the nice haircut. He's a facilities manager running this, team and this whole portfolio of properties. And they would assume that you came from probably a pretty good background, just like people assume when they see me. Right. And I didn't
Yeah.
either. Um, but I think there are a lot of people out there, especially people who don't look like you or I, and whether you think that they deserve a hand up or a hand out or whatever it may be, a lot of people don't realize what it's like to like. At least I had people around me in the construction industry, so I knew what avenues were there. What was that like to not really have an example or really have clear path in the construction industry yet? You come across this opportunity at 15 years old. Like, why'd you take it?
So my brother actually at the time, my mom had just got clean. She just started trying to turn her life around, and my brother, my he's about 11 years older than me. He was actually doing facilities maintenance for a convalescent home at the time. And this guy that he came into contact with had property, and he was trying to start a development company to develop these 40 acres. So that's kind of how I landed into it. My brother saw the path that I was going down, selling a little bit of weed here and there and hanging out with the wrong people. So my brother said, hey, I have this opportunity. Do you want to come? I think you should do it. And dude, honestly, I've never looked back.
And at 15 years old, they were just looking.
Seventh grade dropout, dude. The last school year that I finished complete was sixth grade.
So you were 15 years old and your brother was already in there, right? And they just needed warm bodies. Like,
Yeah.
who's hiring a 15-year-old in construction? And how did you feel about going into that, at that age?
So first of all, I was a seventh grade dropout. The first time I ever dropped out was seventh grade. Um, every year after that, I dropped out. So I was heading down this path to where I was just hanging out with the wrong crowd and kind of just selling a little bit of weed here and there. And that my brother saw that and he had that connection. So he said, hey, I think you should come and try this. I think you'll be good at it and this and that. And I said, okay. And just kind of never turned back. And then after that ended, I met my girlfriend that year, who's now my wife. And her mom saw something in me that nobody else saw in me. And she hooked me up with the landscape contractor, who's a general landscape contractor. And I went to work with him, building fences, doing paver patios, the landscape construction design. Worked with him for several years during the downturn in the economy, and that that led me to another GC, and then I went to work for the GC doing renovations and flooring and painting and all that stuff. So I've just been able to compile all these different
Hmm.
aspects of construction over the years. Eventually, um, in that
So
process,
how did your brother end up getting in? Like, why? It's amazing that you had kind of a good mentor and somebody that was looking out for you to send you down the right path. But I imagine he grew up in the same situation. Was it just a matter of he was just looking for a way to make a few bucks and that's where he landed? Or
my brother was actually doing facilities maintenance at the time. My mom had just
Hmm.
got clean and got off the streets and stuff, and my brother had a facilities job here in Concord, California. And one of the guys that he came into contact with was trying to start a development property of 40
Hmm.
acres. So his idea was to blow this property up and do prefab houses because they were like
Yeah, right.
65 grand a piece. So he's like, I could build a whole track out here. So my brother said, hey, my little brother's not doing anything. Can I bring him with me? And that's kind of how I got started.
And it was just a job for him. Like he kind of found that path just by looking for a way to make a paycheck,
Yeah, like
basically.
like a side job kind of thing. He was full-time employed. He was like, "Yeah, hell yeah, I'll go do it." We needed money.
I asked you a question before I want to get back to, the career path and where that led you, because it's incredible that you were able to get so much experience at a young age. I kind of did the same thing. One of the things that I struggled with at that age is when you're in construction and you're 15, 16, 17 years old, you're making a little bit of money, right?
Yeah.
And when you're in a household that doesn't have money, you can kind of feel the obligation of trying to be a man younger than when most people become men, and you want to take care of your mom, and your mom might even expect you to kind of take care of her. Did you feel any kind of pressure there?
Yeah, to an extent, I was definitely more responsible than a normal kid for sure, especially being the one who's going out and getting it. You know, we've always been on welfare and stuff like that. So social security and welfare was always our primary source of income. Same with hundreds of thousands of other people, you know, it's always
Yeah.
just one person who breaks that chain. And, you know, at the end of the day, if you're serving and you're doing what you need to do, you know, it makes it a little bit easier to be able to provide for people as long as you're doing it for the right reasons.
Did that add to the
But
motivation to get out there and get experience and to be good at what you were doing? Because, you know, you knew the people that were traditionally supposed to take care of you were kind of leaning on you.
for me, I fell in love with craftsmanship. I fell in love with the trades. I wanted to go out, and after I build something, I would drive by it every time I got an opportunity and go, "Hey, you see that right there? I just did that. Oh, I put that fence up. I built that house." You know, that's what I love to do, and I love that more than anything else. So that's what I kept doing. You know, and I don't have a very good relationship with most of my family at this point because at some point, to answer your question, at some point when you close that chapter in your life and you advance to a certain level, you know, all those people kind of stay where they're at. And it's unfortunate that you have to kind of leave people behind. It sounds bad to say, but in order to advance to that next level, not everybody can go. And, you know, you got to cut some people off who don't want to do good for themselves the way that you see good in them, if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense. I have been there. You know, a lot of people that I guess I had left behind because again, we have a lot of parallels going on here. You know, I didn't realize that certain people didn't really have a spot in my life until I was in my late 20s or early 30s, including my own mother, unfortunately. And that's really hard to accept. But the way that I frame it in my mind, or the way that I look at it now, is it's not that I necessarily cut them off. The door is open, but it's for them to walk through.
Right.
Right? Like
Right.
you seem like a good dude. You'd love to take care of people and help them out, but the reality is that, you know, they don't want to help themselves.
Yep.
And they even probably got a little bit bitter when they saw yourself get better, right? And reach
Yep.
for higher and start to achieve, because it's almost like they were looking in a mirror and it was like an indictment on themselves.
Yep.
And
Yep. That's
sometimes,
pretty accurate.
yeah, those you know, those attitudes can get, you know, really souring for sure. And also, by the way, so high school, even though you dropped out of high school or school in seventh grade, married your teenage sweetheart, I guess.
Yeah. So it's a running joke that I went back to school to meet a girl. And so every year, like 8th grade, 7th grade, I dropped out and ended up going to a little bad kid continuation school. 8th grade, I started back at a regular school, lasted there for about 3 months, said to hell with this, I'm out of here. And then I ended up getting homeschooled for the remainder of that year. 9th grade, same thing, dropped out. 10th grade is where I met my wife now. And after that, dude, it just kind of set the sails. Me and her have been through all kinds of crazy stuff, and you know, we're still here today kicking.
uh, you know, it's funny because usually when you have a tumultuous upbringing like that, getting a girlfriend and sticking with that through the whole through your whole life is not usually the way that that goes.
Not even close.
What would you say to a young person that doesn't have a good role model? You know, maybe their parents are addicted to drugs or they have serious health problems. They're a problem child in school. They're getting kicked out of school, or they, you know, dropped out of school. What do you say to that young person that feels like they got more in them, but they don't know what to do?
I would say that they're probably living in the best time in society's history to be able to find somebody like me or you on the internet to be able to have that mentorship. When we were growing up, it wasn't that way. You know, we had to get lucky and have somebody take us under their wings. Hopefully, somebody saw something in us that we didn't see in ourselves. But if you know that you have something in you and you have a little bit of potential, find somebody like Ike, Coach Ike, and just follow them on Instagram. You'd be surprised how much just their little bits and pieces of content that you can take away from that's going to change your life. That would be my advice for a younger person with no guidance.
There has been a lot of talk about the negative effect of social media and things on society, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. There's so much good content out there that, like, just like you said, you know, you used to have to pray that the right person wanted to mentor you and that everything that they gave you was actually good stuff, right? And you kind of
Yeah.
had to sift through it. I always relate mentors to like a stack of $100 bills. No matter who it is, no matter even the best mentor in the world, some of those dollar bills are going to be counterfeit. You want to take the good ones
Yeah.
and leave the crap on the table.
Yeah.
And, it was much more difficult to sift through that 20, 30 years ago than it is today.
Yeah,
So,
you get somebody that, is sharing essentially your life, your reality show is your social media, right? So like somebody's living their life on Instagram and a lot of people are counterfeit. So they post all these things and you don't have that realization of what's real and what's not on
mm,
social media. But if you see the stories and you see people posting their kids and their homes and stuff like that, realistic stuff. And I'm not saying go follow somebody who's going to tell you you're going to make $300,000 a month selling coaching programs online. It's very, very unlikely that that's going to happen. And my point is that you can live a really good life around the six figures around the six figures area of finances. You could live a really good and decent life. And I think most people underestimate that they can get there, or they're overestimating how they can just kill it 10x over that because of certain influencers and coaching people online. So there's like a fine line you got to walk when you do that, but there are plenty of good people out there that can give you that content.
so let's talk about that climb because I am guessing that at 15 years old, starting doing, building homes and landscaping, etc., you probably weren't making top dollar, right? You
No,
probably shouldn't have even have been
no,
working. So,
no.
what were you making to start? And if you could give like the 60-second history, like how'd you make the climb to, the six-figure area?
So when I first started out, I was making $10 an hour. That's big money where I come from. I thought I was rich for a little while there. And slowly over that just progressed up and up. I worked for the landscape contractor. I started with him for at $12 an hour, I think. And then that progressed, and then I worked for the general contractor and I was back to 10 because I just needed a job. And then he saw that I could finish jobs by myself. He bumped me up to 12, and then I just kept climbing. And during that process, very, very, very important to the story, his son ran a Christmas light business. And as a landscaper, Christmas lights is a good off-season job to have.
Sure is.
So he saw I was fearless. And this is my 17th year doing Christmas lights, but he saw that I was fearless and I was willing to work and I was hungry and had a lot of drive. So he recruited me to his Christmas light gig, and we blew it up pretty big. We did like 92 houses one year. I was making $15 an hour with him, and that went on for several years, and I still do it to this day. I can't not do it. So uh, so fast forward a little bit. So I get to be about 20 years old, and the GC that I'm working with, he moves to Idaho. He's done with California. Doesn't want nothing to do with it. I'm out. So I stayed. My son was born that year, and I get a phone call from my uncle. He goes, "Hey kid, do you want a job?" And I said, "Sure, what's it doing?" And he said, "It's a porter job." And I was like, "Well, what's a porter?" He goes, "I don't fucking know, kid. You want a job or not?" And I said, "Well, got a 3-month old kid. When do I start?" So I started that process, and that's how I got into property management with that phone call.
And what's a porter?
A porter is trash collection, cleaning the grounds, picking up cigarette butts and trash throughout the
Yeah.
property. You take the dumpsters and go put in the trash compactor, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's a kind of another word for janitor, right?
Basically,
Basically.
glorified janitor. They told me
Yeah.
that in my interview.
A lot of facilities managers, they would refer to porters as people that clean bathrooms too, right? Or,
Yeah.
anything like that. So, what I love about your story and what I try to tell a lot of young people is like, don't be the lifeguard in high school. Don't be a lifeguard in college. Don't put off getting work experience until you're 25, 30.
Yeah.
The best way to get experience is to just get out in the workforce and get exposed to people and different things and not only find what you like, but gain a perspective on things. What do you have to say about the experience and how many different things you got to do at a young age? And what would you recommend to somebody, that's young and doesn't really know, what they want to do? Like, how did that benefit you?
So I know you're big on jumping into the trades, not pursuing a college education unless it's you need it for what you want to do. Like you're going to go be a doctor. I hope all doctors have education, right? I hope all lawyers have education. So there are plenty of ways to make it without getting that education. And what you're going to do is you're going to catapult yourself way out in front of the people who waste their time getting the education and business management and all these things that like experience is being used in lieu of those things these days. And you can go get yourself, you could be 25 with 6 years of experience, and you're already way ahead of most people who are just now passing their college exams, getting their exams to do the same work you're already doing. So that's kind of my that's kind of my thought process on that whole situation.
I've said the exact same thing, and you in that situation at 25 had 10 years of experience versus somebody coming out of college with no resume.
So also with the debt that comes with that. So so let's give you an example. If you're in property management, typically they pay a little lower than a trades job. You know, you're a jack of all trades, master of none at that point. So
Mhm.
you make a little bit less money. Most of the time it's not union, but typically it's close to home. You know, if you're good at it and you can end up with a company vehicle like I have, you know, there's a lot of perks, quality of life perks that are priceless. You know a lot of guys that sit in traffic that drive way out to the Bay Area every day. I leave from my house later than they do, and I get back to work. I get back home before they do it at the end of the night. You know, there's a lot of good qualities about being in property management that I think is overlooked.
So when you talk about property management, you did the grunt work, right? You started at the bottom and you were there. And I think there's a lot of people that end up doing that for their whole life. And what I try to tell people is like, it's not a life of indentured servitude. Unfortunately, if people stay in those situations, it's probably because they didn't do anything to get better. And
Right.
it's a choice. It wasn't like a multiple choice quiz where they chose to suck and to stay at the bottom of the ladder, but they did make a choice, in a roundabout way. What was the key to you, moving more towards the management side of things rather than staying, doing landscaping and as a porter?
So, back in 2015, I actually left my company. I was a lead of a property of 204 units, and I had that stagnant feeling. I just wanted more. I wanted more, but I knew I didn't think that it was coming here. So I said, okay, let me go out into the world. I went to a non-union plumbing company. I was gone from my property management company for about 3 months, and I was in Oakland driving, in traffic every day, and it I called my boss and I said my old boss, and I said, "Hey, I'd like to come back, but I wanna make sure that there's an opportunity for growth." And, he said, "Meet me in my office tomorrow." So I show up at the office, and, I tell him I'm willing to come back if I know that I can be a part of management in the future, like supervisor position. I want to be in part of decisions. I want to know the ins and outs of the business and operations and how all that stuff works because I know there's more than just maintenance, right? You just got to work for it and you got to close mouths don't get fed. You got to be confident enough to walk in the room and take over the room and prove your point because it's super essential to getting anywhere in a place like a property management company has a lot of politics. So you really have to be kind of an outlaw and stick to your guns, and you'd be surprised.
Couple good things there, right? I think a lot of people wait and they expect a raise or a promotion to be kind of handed to them or more responsibility to be handed to them. Two things. Number one, sometimes you just got to ask for it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
hey, ask and you shall receive. They might not even know that you want that, right? Like, how are they supposed to read your mind? Number one. And number two, then you got to walk the walk. You got to get in the room and you actually have to take the responsibility. You got to take it seriously. You got to show confidence. You got to show hunger, the eagerness to learn. So, I mean, I love that story. Um,
Can I jump? Can I cut you off
yeah,
real quick? I
yep,
want to jump back to what you just said about
go for it.
how do they know you want to raise, right? So most people run around in businesses and they talk about money. So they go, "Oh, I want to raise. I deserve this. I deserve that." But most people aren't willing to do more than they're getting paid to do. For one, and for two, you can't. One of the hardest things that you can do in a corporation is go justify them to give you more money for doing the same thing that you're already doing for what you're doing it for. That's a really, really challenging thing to do when you're looking at it from a financial standpoint. This person's already doing what they're doing. So let it ride. But if you're going above and beyond, it makes that conversation a lot easier, but they're not going to offer it to you. You have to go ask for it.
Again, very timely conversation because I just spoke about this the other day, but I think one of the digs that I would have on Gen Z is or Gen A, both, is the notion that I only get paid to do a certain job and I'm not willing to do more than that, right?
Yep.
If you want me to do more, pay me more. It's like,
Yep.
okay, why don't you flip the script, and before you ask for more money, ask yourself how you're bringing more value. Like, are they
Exactly.
making more money on your projects? Are you bringing in more projects? Like, what does that look like? And when you do that, that puts you in a way better negotiating position than just
100%.
saying, like, I need more money. And it's at the end of the year, and a lot of people are having these conversations right now.
Yep.
And the worst thing that you can do is like go on Glassdoor or Indeed or something and just type in a job title and have it spit something back to you, because the reality is that you're probably, whatever that number is, like I've had people in estimator positions think they should be making $130,000 or $150,000 a year, and it's like, that's somebody with like 20 years experience that doesn't need to be told what to do or watched. Like, they can go out and win jobs on their own, not somebody that's like 2 years in and makes a ton of mistakes,
Yep.
and needs a ton of oversight. So I love that advice. Um, we're coming up on time. We would like to keep these short. Is there anything that you were hoping that you would get to, talk about when you came on here, or do you have any advice, for the people coming up in the industry?
Um, but I know that there's a lot of people out there like me, and it sounds like you have a similar story as we aligned. I really just want to make an impact and show other people it can be done. Seventh grade dropout on my third home, it can be done, and you got to do it. You got to figure out a way to do it. The world is not against you. Find a good mentor, find somebody good to follow, and model who you want to be like. Don't always accept advice from somebody you can't see yourself being like. That's huge. I do that a lot. I say, okay, this person's got an idea for me, and I don't see myself driving a 2005 Toyota Camry for the rest of my life, so maybe I'm not going to take their advice. You know, you have to model who you want to be like. Who has something that you don't know that you don't have? Figure out what you don't know that they know and execute it.
Yeah, the best. What do they say? Like, the best direction, or the best way to get advice is from somebody coming on the way back from the path. It's something like that. But
Yep.
basically, like, people around you don't know more than you just because it's not you. People older than you act like they know a lot more than you, and like they have advice and like they've seen things, and yeah, you should probably hear them out, but the best advice is going to come from people that have what you want. And the only way that you're
Yep.
going to get in front of those people is to put yourself in front of those people and to perform and to make it seem like you're worth mentoring, from them.
Another piece that I get from a lot of older people is that I'm always quiet when I'm in a room with people I don't know, or high value people. I'm usually pretty quiet, and most of the time I'm a pretty outgoing person. I love to be the center of attention, but when I get around people with hundreds of millions of dollars, that's not my time to talk, because they know a lot of stuff that I don't know. Like, I watch their hand movements, I watch how they walk to the bathroom, I watch how they conduct themselves, because at the end of the day, if I'm making six figures, if I'm making $100,000 flat, these guys are making 100 million. They know a lot of shit that we have no idea about.
Mm.
And the only way to dissect that is to shut up and listen. Because if you're talking, you're not listening.
Yeah, they got it for a reason. And it's not
Yep.
because you're a victim and they were fortunate and hit the lottery, or because God favored them. It's because they know
Straight
something
up.
that you don't. And
Straight up.
if you are to speak, I would recommend that people don't try to dazzle or sell. It's exactly what you just said. Be quiet,
Yep.
observe, and if you're going to say anything, ask a question and try and get more out of them.
Yep. Yep. Don't make yourself look stupid.
So, Eric, can people reach out to you if they have any questions, or want any advice?
Absolutely. Yeah, you could find me at Eric Will Hunt on Instagram. I'm not very active on Facebook. That's more like personal family type stuff. Instagram's where you can find me, Eric Will Hunt. Open book, man. I live my life and I try to encourage and impact everybody else to better themselves. I'm not in the business of changing people. I'm in the business of helping people change themselves.
That's awesome. I love that. Just
Yeah.
another example of somebody that's out here that has been down the path, that has found success, and that is making themselves available as a mentor, right? Again, this is the perfect opportunity that we're talking about that you and I didn't have in the 90s or early 2000s. So
Yep.
if you're listening, please make sure that you take advantage of that. You reach out to me, you DM me, or you DM Eric, and you have people, in your corner that can help you. So Eric, I appreciate you coming on. Would love to have you. Would love to have you on again. I know that there's a lot more that we can cover here. But in the interest of time, we're trying to keep it to a car ride to work or to school or something that somebody can complete the show. So I appreciate everybody for listening. Again, Construction Mentor Podcast. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and you can catch the clips on Instagram and TikTok. So if you're still listening, we love you, and we'll see you next time.